Welcome, guys, to another episode of URC Chumps podcast. Unfortunately, my other fellow champions aren't with me, but I have a new champion with me, Tim Vann. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm good yourself, mate. Thanks for inviting me. Really
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
just tell our viewers some of the your CV in rugby, because I mean it's quite an intricate CV that has been there. I know we played with each other at Massey for about a season before you moved on, but yeah, just give them a bit of a rundown of who you played for and what you've done.
Sure, no problem. So it started obviously, went to school. I went to one boys high school. I played, I think 45 the caps for the first team. I played both grade 11 and matric first team at Weinberg. Then I played at False Banner 20s. Um, and then after that, I went to Italy. Then I went to England. And I played there. Then I came back, played Grand Challenge at Villages. After that, I then went to Germany, played a season in Bundesliga for a club in Berlin, and got back and went to New Zealand, played club rugby there, then played in the Heartland Cup for West Coast. I then came back and played in Batumi in Georgia, and then finished off my career at SV Eagles in George in the Curry Cup B, and then went into coaching. And now I'm overseas and I'm playing again. I shouldn't just be coaching, but I'm actually still playing in the Bundesliga 2 in Germany at the moment. So yeah, I'm still keeping myself busy. But played for many years and then did a bit of coaching afterwards. And yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. Yeah. Well, I can't hear you, my man.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's
Oh, there
great
you
to
go.
have you on board. Sorry, my dogs are barking. It's great to have you on board. Uh, but yeah, I think I'm sorry I have to do this, but I'm gonna have to bring us down a little bit with some of the news that has just recently broken this week, which is of course not great when you hear someone of the age of 37 passing away. Um, Cornal Hendriks unfortunately has passed away.
Yeah, it's tragic, man. Yeah.
It is
Hell
tragic.
of a player.
I know his heart condition did give him a break from 27 before he joined back with the Bulls after seeming like it had sorted it out, but obviously it was still there and it caught up with him. To the Hendricks family, condolences. To the Bulls, she's the list of teams that he's played for. Uh, Also condolences to you guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the guy who fought very nicely to end to get to play for the Springboks, and I think he finished off at the Bullet at the moment, and they just won the Curry Cup B. So very
yeah.
sad.
I mean, I still remember him getting taken up by Liam from Wales and giving us a penalty try, which let us win in the final minute or the final second of the game. And then also seeing him running around Cape Town in the Australian jersey after he swapped it after the Springboks beat them in Cape Town. So that
Yeah.
game, yeah, my wife thought I'd drink myself silly, but it was just because there was a sea of beer that came over the tier above us. But moving on, yeah, we got 30 days to go until the final, which is kind of exciting, or 29 actually. But yes, this is what happened this week. We'll break down each game. As you can see, the Stormers have now officially locked in. That's 5 of the 8 spaces, only 3 available this week. We start off this week with Sharks taking on Ospreys, which Ospreys didn't even look like they pitched up for me. I don't know if it's just because they arrived on Thursday to play on Friday,
Excuse me.
which, yeah, It seems like some of the Northern Hemisphere teams, their traveling has been a bit weird because they leave and only arrive at their destination on like a Friday or late Thursday.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I mean, traveling is jet lag, and traveling is always a thing, and it's not the closest jump over the puddle. But also, it's difficult to play a sharp side that's packed with so many Springboks, and they've got class all over the field. Um, it's very difficult to go to the Shark Tank and then beat them. I think it's a massive effort.
yeah. I mean, that game, the Sharks just looked like they were on a different level. Obviously, I think they are holding back a bit, knowing that there's still at least another 3 rounds to go, 4 if you include this week. Um, that yeah, it's a bit hectic. But then moving across back up to Ireland, we had Munster from last week being a bit dismal, actually playing an awesome game, giving Omani probably the last home game that he has, or I think he's got one more game this week. We'll check later.
Yeah,
But the last like Irish showdown, giving him a good send off now because of course he's retiring at the end of the season with the 38-20 win. Uh, yeah, but what I've noticed in the past 2 weeks, which I think something else that needs to work on, is whatever their score is at halftime is what the score is at the end of the game. Because last week was 19, and they ended up losing something 19, and then against Munster having 20 points up at halftime, and then going down 38-20. Looks like they just switched off at halftime, which might be a problem that they need to look at. I know they have some serious talent coming in, especially with the likes of Augustus next season, who's a bit of a workhorse straight all the way through.
yeah, 100%.
But yeah,
Yeah, that's a good
then
point.
yeah, Bulls carrying on with the way that they're going, 45-21 over Cardiff. They look like they were on a different level, and they look like they're just coasting at another point,
Yeah, I
which
agree with that statement. Yeah.
yeah. I didn't watch the full game, but the parts that I did watch, I was like, it's over before. I mean, Caden Moody was having some weird passes
On
out of
form at the
hand.
moment. Yes,
Yeah,
he's on form at the moment.
obviously, as Jake White said to him, he needs to leave the buffet alone. I think he's left the buffet and found the salad uh, table.
Started when scrums off, man.
Yeah, if he was in the scrums, he would have been at the dessert table. But anyway, yeah. Uh, Benetton, this was a bit of a shock. I wasn't even going to watch this game or anything. I didn't. And then when I saw the results, I'm like, no way, this can't be true. And I was actually on my way to Cape Town when this happened. I was like, what
Uh,
the
yeah,
hell?
I didn't give them a hope. And if they did win, I thought it was going to be by one or two maximum. I did not expect a dominant performance like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
impressive.
Glasgow, now it does put them into a bit of jeopardy with who they play against and everything like that. But we'll talk more about that later on. The game that I was actually at, that I was, to be honest, at halftime going up 14-0, I was like, oh gosh, it's not going to be a 5 point game. And then all of a sudden, halftime came and boom. I was disappointed and happy for Damien Valencer.
Yeah,
Yes, Jacques, Damien Valencer. I know Jacques doesn't like Damien Valencer.
Damien was good, and he's a
No,
fantastic player.
he was awesome. He,
Again, he's a player who can cover basically the entire back line. He reminds me of a like a Franz Steyn type player. Obviously, not such a big boot, but what an asset to any team, man. He can cover you anywhere in the back line.
yeah. But I mean, what was funny is the fact that he scored on his 100th game and then they try got disallowed due to a
Yeah,
neck
and then he
roll.
scored
And then
again.
he still
Top
scored.
class, top class.
And he still slotted a few with in the end. Of course, as that game was happening, Leinster was taking on Zebra 76-5.
Yes.
71-point difference. I wasn't expecting anything else, especially from a team like Zebra
I
against.
mean, yeah, but I didn't expect 70. I was expecting
Yeah,
a 40. I was expecting a 40, a 40-20, or a 30-10, or 50, but 76. And you're still a competitive, a club. You can't be losing by 70 points. I don't care how good the opposition is.
but don't forget, world or the Irish Player of the Year is Archius Neyman.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at, they've got our coach, they've got a couple of our players. Now they're taking the New Zealanders. I mean, Rico Ani going over next season, that's going to be insane,
I
So,
still find that funny. The guy that Ireland hates the most is is the player that's going over to play with them next year. Uh,
they only hate him because he's bloody good, but I would have him in my
yeah,
team anytime. So,
yeah.
goodbye. But, at what point are they just now the Real Madrid of rugby? Is that what's happening? They just I hate to say
Mm,
because I'm a City supporter, but are they just doing a City and just buying the cup here? What's happening?
yeah. Uh, the one game I was actually a bit surprised with, and I was actually hoping in standing wise for Dara was that Connacht would actually lose to. I mean, Connacht would beat Edinburgh, but they ended up losing to Edinburgh. Uh,
Uh,
it was going back and forth at one point, and then all of a sudden Edinburgh was just like, "Nah, leave you guys behind."
yeah,
And yeah, unfortunately for Connacht, they couldn't catch up. The Scarlets going up against the Lions. I don't know what's up with this Lions. They look good, and then all of a sudden they don't look good, and then they look good, and then the beginning of this year, I still said they would probably be the team to win if they can carry on with their performance, and they just
they at one stage, like you said, they were looking unreal. The style of rugby they were playing, the speed of which the breakdown was getting cleared, it was really top class. So that shocked me to see them go down by that much to a Scarlet side who we all know Wales is struggling. So
mm,
I wasn't expecting a blowout like that. But the Lions, when they're
yeah,
on, they're going to beat anyone. And if they're not, they're unfortunately going to put out a performance like they did on the weekend. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that game just it looked. Yeah, I don't know what's up with this Lions team. I see there's a bit of issues in the back as well because Nahamba's upset with the fact of not being played and everything like that. They need to get their balance right. I think that's part of the problem. They got a very young team that if they actually have to build up around is
Yeah,
phenomenal.
correct.
But I just think it's being mismanaged right at the moment. So yeah,
I agree with that too.
this is how the playoffs stand. As I said, five of the positions are locked in. Three of them being South African, one being Ireland, and one being Scotland. But as it stands, this is how the games are going to go at the moment. Um, Sharks and Stormers can still bounce around at the moment of who they're playing against. Stormers, unfortunately, in their current position, will be away. For the best thing is they'll want the Sharks to stay where they are so they can go play here. Otherwise, it looks like we're going to be playing against Glasgow, depending on how the games go.
So here's a question for
Uh,
you. So if you were the
yeah.
Stormers, would you rather play Glasgow or would you play the Sharks? What would you be asking the gods for, the rugby gods? Personally, I would rather play Glasgow than the Springbok laden Sharks. Um, but that's just me. I think the Stormers have got a really attacking front, which is exceptional, and I think they'll break Glasgow down out wide. Whereas they won't have the same effect on the Sharks. So that's why I'm sort of saying that.
Yeah, for me, I would say I would like to play the Sharks first and see how it goes
Yeah,
because it's not as such a far travel. Because also don't forget
I
if we're
agree to
playing
that.
against
Traveling's a thing.
if we're playing against Glasgow, that means we have to travel to the probably the most northern part of this log. and go play against them up there. So, listen, both games are going to be tough. Either way, you're going to look at it. Glasgow has the likes of Hugh Jones, who of course knows a lot of the Stormers set up because he of course played for the Stormers.
Yeah.
But I mean, unfortunately for South Africa, that's the way it goes a lot of the time. I mean, you can go through every single team on that list right now, and every single team has a South African in them.
100%.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this is how the logs are looking right now. As we said, if we look there by number 3, Glasgow is only 1 point ahead of Hollywood Bets. Now, let's quickly look here. Glasgow is going up against Leinster, which means if they lose, which is very likely to happen.
Yeah, they're struggling to win that one.
Yeah. But then if we look at the Sharks are going up against Scarlets. So Scarlets win. That probably puts them up 5th or 6th, depending on how the other games go. Sorry. But it's coming quite tight. So either way, Stormers look at it. We're traveling. How are we going to travel depends on this weekend. But of course, we have Stormers starting this weekend, 6 o'clock UK time, 7 o'clock South African time. With Stormers going up against Cardiff. If Stormers play the way they played last week, they're definitely going to win this game, at least with bonus points.
What do you think the score is going to be? If you were a betting man, what are you saying there?
I'm going to say 33-12.
33-12.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Cardiff's pretty good. I mean, if they win, they're going to get 46. I mean, they're on 46 now. They win, they're 50. They'll jump up to probably 6th position. But I don't think they're going to beat us. They look out of place. Like I said, they're traveling around South Africa at the moment.
Yep.
It's been messed up.
And the Stormers are on
there's
form at the moment. They're hitting form at the right time, that's for sure.
Yeah, which is what we do on a regular basis. At least that locks us in for Champions Cup next year. But yes, there we have Edinburgh hosting Ulster. Edinburgh, of course, if they win, go to 48, which will probably put them at 7th position, knocking Munster out the contention, and Benetton will probably just be hanging on. If that's how, but of course, Munster's hosting Benetton, which is pretty much
a good one. A good one.
Whoever wins that game literally holds on to the 8th position.
I think Munster's got it. Personally, I think Munster's got it.
I also think Munster's got it. Bulls are going up against Dragons. We know how that's going to go just because.
Bulls will win that hands down.
Lions are going up against Ospreys. Now, this is just a game for pride.
Yeah, but it's both sides on their day can beat anyone, and both sides on their day can be absolutely terrible. It's they both have the capability of being brilliant. Both sides, like I've seen both sides play some exceptional running rugby. So for me, that's going to be a great game to watch. I think it'll go end to end to end to end. I think they're going to both sides is going to, because like you say, it's a nothing game. It's just for pride. But I think they're really going to run everything, both sides. So I think it's going to be a great game to watch.
Yeah. I'm probably going to have to say Ospreys will probably come up because I know they're playing for a lot of Whilst Pride at the moment as well.
Yeah.
But then we have Zebra hosting Connacht. Now, we know Zebra isn't the greatest team, but they have beaten quite a few teams at home. And they have been quite close. I mean, their last home game against Cardiff was 6-14, and they were holding Cardiff for quite some time. And I mean, it was only for the fact that Cardiff scored 2 tries to the 2 penalties, which they had at halftime, which was 6-0. They can be quite dangerous as well. But Connacht, again, can also step up. But, of course, 4G compared to grass is also another story, and we'll probably discuss that a little bit later in the
very much
few more
different.
episodes. Yeah. But yeah, that's going to be hard. But I'm going to probably have to go with Connacht because they're higher up. And again, pride. Sharks going up against Scarlets. Scarlets are busy pushing to see who they're going to play up against and probably want to end up higher. They're going to come to the Shark Tank to play. But I think
Certainly.
Sharks are going to push it because they're going to want to either end up third or keep their fourth position, depending on what happens with Glasgow and Leinster. But of course, their game depends on what happens with Glasgow and who Glasgow plays. Because if they stay where they are in
They
fourth,
play in Leicester next, so Leinster
yeah.
next. Leinster, sorry.
So that's what I said. So if the Sharks happen to lose, there's a chance they're playing against the Stormers. If Glasgow loses to Leinster, there's a chance they're playing against Glasgow's going to play against Stormers. So I mean, this is a Stormers are playing a game and then they're sitting at the bar watching the games after this.
Well, at least it's in their hands. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean it is still an exciting weekend coming. As the rugby guy says, the winner is going to be rugby, and everything like that.
Always is. Always is.
Yeah. But then
But,
talking about that, the team or the squad for the Lions has been announced, and this
crazy,
is the current.
Crazy,
Yeah,
crazy.
I still think that was a
were you
mistake.
shocked that there were only 2 Wales players in the entire line setup, or did you expect none of them to go, considering how they've been in the Six Nations? And what does it say for the 2 players that did make it on their performance to get into a Lions tour after getting the wooden spoon 2 years in a row?
I mean, I still said that the whole thing with Gats, I've said early on, is whoever replaces Gat needs to look at grassroots levels for Wales. Those two guys that are in
There's
the
no,
team
it's
right now,
non-existent in Wales. Grassroots
yeah,
is non-existent.
that's why I said they need to pull a Rassie. Rassie has looked from grassroots all the way up and everything like that. And yeah, I know there has been a lot of discussion as well about the fact that there's a lot of foreign-born players actually in here. And they said a couple of the pundits up there have said those could have been actually been replaced with a couple of Wales or people that missed out. Because, like I said, a lot of them are what you call it, foreign born. I mean, if we go through here, let's go. Ronan Keeler, Piers Kuman, Bundy Aki, Jamie Gibson Park, Mac Hansen, James Lowe, that's 6 already. Tia Pilato and Duan van der Merwe. That's 8 players, just that I know off the top of my head, that are foreign-born players playing in the British and Irish Lions.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the way it's going these days. I mean, the fact that you can now change nationalities is, for me, a bit ridiculous, but okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the way the game's going. There were, for me, quite a few. Like, what did you think of the 2 Finns and the Marcus Smith as your 10s? No Owen Farrell, no George Ford. George Ford's playing fantastically at the moment. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is Marcus Smith 10 and 15 cover? Is he more of a 15/10 or is more of a 10/15? Or no Prendergast from Ireland, who I thought would get the nod.
The problem is Prendergast's last couple of weeks' performance has probably knocked him out because he hasn't been that great. But then there's the likes of Jack Crowley as well.
Yeah, but is he not? Would you take him over Smith? As a
to
10?
be honest, I'm not a big Marcus Smith fan, especially after
I'm also not.
watching the what's called the Netflix documentary. I think Nick Mallet had a very good point about Finn Russell, which is the fact that Finn Russell is too arrogant to have in a team on the bench and can actually mess up behind the
Yeah,
scenes.
I mean, for me, I would pick a Finn Russell. He's been on the Lions tour before. He's got the experience. He's still a hell of a player. Um, yeah, at this stage, I would definitely have him in my side, in my squad for sure. Would he make my starting international match day? Tough because Finn Russell and Finn Smith for me are the two tens that are putting the hands up most for the 10 spot over Marcus Smith.
Yeah.
So I think they'll start Finn Russell over Finn Smith in the internationals, just purely based on his experience.
Well, don't forget they still have their warm up game against Argentina, which, saying that, their captain might have a problem with one of the dirtiest players in world rugby history of Tomas Lavanini.
Thomas Lavini
Mara,
is yeah, well, uh,
I wonder how
there's an
Mara is going to.
enforcer and then there's a headless chicken, and he's borderline the headless chicken more than the enforcer.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's the guy that you go into the field, you wind up, and he'll get sent off, and then you can stick with the marital advantage. But yeah, Mario Toji, skipper. You can't tell me he's the best they got to skipper this Lions side. I don't even think he's the best lock they've got, but okay.
yeah,
You know, I said to you earlier, he's really nice and he's a great player when things are going right and the pack's going forward and he's able to sort of bully his opposition. But as soon as he gets a big, rough and tough guy on the other side, like a Thomas Lalavini or even Etzebeth,
Damien
then
Delende.
he seems to go into his shallow bits and you don't really see him. So it'll be interesting, that Argentinian game. But they've got some hell of a good side here. They've got a really nice, I would say, it's the flow of a side. They've got a nice
Yeah,
attacking side. I think they've put the players together well. So it'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a really, I think Australia are rebuilding and they're looking really good at Super Rugby at the moment, their sides.
yeah,
So I'm interested to see how Australia go in this too. Not just the Lions, but just see how Australia have progressed since last season, the horrors of last season. And then
but I mean,
obviously, yeah, sorry.
yeah, yeah. The one thing that I still don't understand is how they got Joe Smith just until the Lions tour, and then all of a sudden he's done, and then you have another coach stepping in for 2 years before the World Cup.
I mean, they should never have let him go. I
No.
think he's a very good coach. And I don't know if you remember, but Rassie Rasmussen, he started for South Africa. His win rate was not too good either.
Yeah,
I think he in the first year, I think he had like a 40% win rate.
50,
Um, yeah, 50. Yeah,
54, I think it was something like
yeah,
that.
it
Yeah,
was one of the lower ones. And it turned the corner. But I think Joe Smith is a superb coach, and he definitely knows what he's doing. And I think they should have done everything in their powers to hang on to him,
yeah,
especially until the World Cup, because you need 4 years to build your squad. So it's going to be interesting. How's Elliot Daly making his third freaking Lions tour, but can't make the English starting lineup?
yeah.
I think he's going to have more caps for the Lions than he will for England. He's one of those players who suffers because he can play everywhere. And yeah, so it's great for Lions, but it's not. I mean, here's a guy who doesn't even play for England, but he's made the Lions tour for his third time. So good on him. Yeah,
If Rusty was the coach of England, he'll definitely be in because he's a star player. But then
he's a
that
fantastic rugby player.
yeah. But I mean, that's part of the difference between North and South right now. South looks at more versatility than North. When North is more, you become a professional in your position. You don't really become a professional in being able to slot in anywhere. Because I mean, you look at the likes of Sasha, Damien, uh, we can even say Pollard, who can literally slot from 10 to 12, some into 15.
Yeah. I mean,
And they can slot in like it's nothing. And I think that whole bomb squad here in South Africa has exasperated it and made it a lot more bigger and impactful being a utility player. Because I mean, we got Jesse Creel, who is part of our most capped center pairing, and he can also slot in on the wing.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you look at the South African pack, it's fantastic. And I mean, I've even said to people, someone asked me, well, what do you think about the likes of Cocker Smith always on the bench? I said, Cocker Smith's on the bench because if something goes wrong in your back line, he can actually slot in at center
Yeah,
because of
I
that
mean,
sevens experience.
people forget that he played like a stupid amount of sevens caps,
Yeah,
and he's actually exceptionally quick, and he can handle himself in the backs. I mean, Quacker Smith can play inside center, outside center, and wing. He's a hell of a ball player, and he's put on the field still. He's an exceptional. He's like a dog over the ball. And in late in the second half, when the other side's tired and you got a fresh Quacker Smith on the field, he is going to get 2 or 3 penalties for you that other people probably would not manage to do that. There's certain times he can get in and amongst people that, quite frankly, is a speciality. Richie McCaw did it quite well. Those you can just find their way into the gap over the ball. So yeah, I think he's on the bomb squad for a reason. He's got a job to do, and yeah, it's not because he's not good enough to play or start. I think it's just a role he's playing in the Springbok side. People forget that it's not just the best will start. It's what's best for the team, and for what's best for the team is to have him come on as an impact player.
yeah.
Hence the reason it's called a bomb squad.
But I mean,
So for
yeah,
me, it's a role you play in the team and not whether you're good enough to start or not.
yeah. No, I mean, I agree with that. I'm wondering, are we even going to see probably like a bomb squad coming from the Lions against Australia and everything?
I'm sure. I don't know because Australia is gonna. I think that's gonna be a quick test match. I think they're gonna run the ball very quickly. I think they're gonna. Both sides will be. I think it'll be a high tempo match.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean we could see a complete change in the front row definitely. Taking an extra prop over a back and maybe an extra loose forward. So yeah, I think you can see a 6-2 or 7-1. I think that could happen. I don't think Australia will do it though. I think if anyone's going to do it, it will be the Lions. But I think Australia will stick to a more conventional way of doing things.
But now you as a coach, especially up north, seeing like a 6-2 split, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, personally, I don't see the problem with it. I know that some of the North people have an issue with it, saying that it's not within the laws or the philosophy of rugby and stuff like that. But it is within the law, and I don't see a problem with it. I think it's a great strategic move. I wouldn't use it every game, but if I was playing in New Zealand and I'm South Africa, I would definitely do it because the way to beat New Zealand is to front up, get in their faces, and dominate them up front. Get front foot ball. But
I mean, yeah, I went to a rugby clinic the one time and I saw, I think it was John de Jong. And I asked him, I said, what are your thoughts on this? Because it was at that time that everybody's complaining about it. And he's like, well, he doesn't see a problem with it. He asked me, so what do you think about it? I said, well, if you look at it, you break down the laws, it's actually a 50-50 split. And he looked at me and said, well, what do you mean it's a 50-50 split? So I was like, well, let's look at it. World Rugby has determined who your first three are, no matter what you want. It is your front row. You have to have a front row. If you don't have a front row, you lose substitutions. And then you have five players. So you look at it, it's three in the front, two in the back. So it's literally like a 50-50 split in your back line, or I mean, in your replacements. I think the likes of Jean de Villiers said he didn't quite agree with it, but he said that's not his call. He's not the coach. And but as I said, it's a basically you splitting 50-50, and the likes of like a Cocker Smith make it a 50-50 because you have a guy that can slot in one way or the other way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I think if you think it's cheating or whatever, it's clearly within the rules. And if you think it's such an amazing thing and you complaining about it, do it yourself. Get yourself your own bomb squad like the French did,
yeah,
and go and do it. It's within the laws, so for me, I just don't have an issue with it. I understand that some sides will take issue in it because they can't front up to a side like South Africa for 80 minutes with basically two of. I mean, the South African second string front row is probably the best in the world. Do you know what I mean? So they complaining because first of all they got to go and scrum against the best front three in the world, and then in the second half they get a fresh bunch of the next best front row in the world. So they're basically playing half a game against the best front row in the world, and the second half against the second best front row in the world.
But
so
you're saying that as well. I mean, that whole discussion about France going to New Zealand, and the fact that France is probably not taking a full string squad because of the top 14, and New Zealand's finding it a bit of a slap in the face. But at the same time, when you hear South Africa's, they're playing their second or third team, you don't hear the people going, oh, no, that's a disgrace to play against their team. Everybody's going, well, if Rusty's put in those people, that means they're just as good as the first team.
Yeah, I remember watching that Australian game in Australia last year where we played it's not even our second team, it's probably our third string team, and we still managed to put, I think, 30 points in there. And that was guys I hadn't seen a lot of them before. So that was for me very interesting. New Zealand mustn't take it all too hard. At the end of the day, it is what they've still got the Pro 14, and it is what it is, and it's not like they're just not taking the best side. And if you're gonna look at it like that, then why aren't you having players that are playing in France or somewhere else? New Zealand's aren't picking those players, so they're not picking their strongest side in anyways. So it's a pot calling a kettle black because they're not picking the best.
Yeah, I know Razor is busy trying to change the whole dynamic. He's trying to go with the same mentality as Rassie, whereas if you're New Zealand,
100% should. Losing Richie Mo'unga and all those players, Ricky Ori going overseas next year, Barrett overseas. These are all players who now can't play for New Zealand. It's a huge loss.
I mean, if you look at it, you got the likes of Rico Arani going over to Ireland next year, which makes him out of contention for a period of time. Jordy Barrett coming in, then you get Donaldson saying, oh no, Barrett should be seated because he's not playing in a high string or a top tier competition. But yet the New Zealanders complained when South Africa pulled out because it dropped their level of rugby. And it's like now you're saying one thing, now you're saying something else. The fact that we're there, now you're saying, oh no, they're not a top one, but you are missing us at the same time.
Look, I mean, I hear it, and it's such a stupid argument because, if you look at the Northern Hemisphere rugby compared to the Southern Hemisphere rugby, it is not worse or better. It's just a completely different style.
Yeah.
And, if you look at Super Rugby versus the Northern Hemisphere rugby, then you're looking at a little bit slower, but a lot harder, a lot more aggression, a lot more physicality, a lot more tactical kicking in the URC. If you go to the Super Rugby, you'll see a lot more offloading, a lot more skill, a lot more speed, but it won't, those physical contacts will be, I think it'll be a good 15 to 10% less hard in Super Rugby than it is at the URC. But it won't be as quick as the Super Rugby game. The Super Rugby game, they're playing at a very high pace. And yes, you will get some sides in the URC that do play at a very high pace. For example, the Stormers, the Lions, we played at exceptionally high pace. But if you're looking at songs like Saracens and Leicester Tigers and London Wasps, they play at a very slow pace, but they play physical rugby. So it's not better rugby, it's not worse rugby, it's just a different style of rugby. And I think it's tomato. You can't compare the two. And I think it's benefited the Springboks quite a bit to play in this. And I think New Zealand are missing our South African sides. They're missing that physical aspect that we brought to Super Rugby, which they don't have anymore.
But no, you mentioned it, different style. But of course, now playing on a 4G pitch is also a completely different style. It is completely different. The bounces are harder and everything like that. For me, I think that is where the likes of Wales are falling, because they play a lot more games on 4G and Scotland than they do on grass.
I played in Georgia. We played on one of those artificial pitches, and it is a completely different world. The ball bounces differently. It rolls differently. It's very weird. It also feels weird to run on because it's so level. You know, a rugby field is not level, but when you're running on this thing, it's like an ironing board. It's completely level, and it actually feels weird because you're just not used to playing a game of rugby, and you're running. There's not a single pothole. There's not a single ditch. Everything is, completely. The surface is completely 100% level, and it actually feels weird. But the biggest difference is the bounce of the ball is completely warped. It's completely different.
No,
and you would have to play on it a couple of times to even get a feeling for how the ball's going to bounce compared to a normal pitch.
Yeah. But I think we should call it tonight. Vann, thanks for joining me. It's great to chat to you again and everything. Awesome. He will definitely be joining us a lot more, hopefully every week from now on. Give us a little bit more of an in-depth analysis from his side. But thanks for joining me today. Remember, fellow champions, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. And be well, be safe, champions. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.